a world where the number of movies available is great, but many are so bad, you'll learn a new definition of hate. One man sifts and reviews through the movie sludge. One man will be the movie cop, jury, and judge. He goes by many names, but you know him by Movies Merica.
Hey, all you beautiful movie-loving people out there, live from a red carpet somewhere, surrounded by celebrities. This is the Movies Merica podcast with Van Ebert, where movie reviews meet cold brews. Van will review your favorite and maybe not so favorite movies while enjoying some ice-cold beers and saying cheers. Now let's head into the theater and join our illustrious movie reviewer du jour, who's no doubt got the beer ready to pour, Van Ebert. Heyo! Hey everyone, welcome to Movies Merica podcast. Always welcome here. Always good to just know you're on the other side of this microphone with just such love in your heart for your humble host here, Van Ebert. I'm just gonna assume that's the case right there, and you're not looking at, your player, your radio, whatever, with utter disdain and hate in your. Okay, anyway, I don't know, I don't know where that came from, but hey, all that to say, welcome to Movies Merica. So today, our Movies Merica podcast is going galactic. That's right. We're headed to outer space here because this here review will be about Dune.
My planet Arrakis is so beautiful when the sun is low. Rolling over the sands, you can see spice in the air. The outsiders ravage our lands in front of our eyes. Their cruelty to my people is all I've known. What's to become of our world? Paul.
A boy.
Hey, Duncan, can I trust you with something?
Yes, always. You know that.
I've been having dreams about a girl on Arrakis. I don't know what it means.
Dreams make good stories. But everything important happens when we're awake.
Now that's a portion of a trailer, but the whole trailer is pretty good. You should get it on like YouTube or something like that. And if you want to watch a trailer, what am I talking about? Trailer? Here, go see the whole movie. Come on, Van. Come on. What are you saying? Yeah. So this review is about not just Dune. This is Dune Part One. And so you'll see at the end of this movie, it'll be obvious they're setting it up for a part 2. And lo and behold, luckily, they have already greenlit a part 2. Here I thought it was going to take them like months for them to decide whether or not to put out a Dune Part 2, but they didn't waste any time. It just took one weekend. The numbers look good, and they greenlit a part 2. So this is part 1, though, and part 1 is great here. But before we get too far into the sands of Dune, let me remind you that we have got this podcast available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, any other podcast player. I mean, chances are Movies Merica podcast is out there. So feel free, if you would, on any of those to give it a 5-star rating if you rightfully think it's good. If you think it's dreck, if you think it's something out of a podcast dumpster, you know what? Hey, don't give it a 5-star rating. But hey, if you're still feeling nice and you're like, oh, that was garbage, but I still want to give it a 5-star rating, hey, moi will not be offended. Okay. And then also, if you want to give it a review there as well, that'd be great. I like looking at the reviews. I like to reach out to those who give me reviews when I can. Also, download the episodes there as well, if you would. Also, the podcasts are all on moviesmerica.com. Actually, there are some of these podcast episodes that are on moviesmerica.com that aren't on the podcast players. So just to give you a heads up on that. Also, I'm on Twitter and Instagram under Movies Merica. If you want to share anything with me, if you're in a sharing mood, it's like you want to go back to kindergarten and show and tell and, just conversate with me out there. So, I'd like to hear from the people. I don't want to just be the one doing all the talking, right? I don't want to be yap all the time, So just jabbing all the time. I want to hear from you. So you can tell me how terrific you think I am or how terrible I am. All that. Okay? And also, if you've ever listened to a Movies America podcast episode before, you know that we don't just review movies here. This isn't just about reviews. This is about ice cold brews. Okay? This is what sets us apart from everybody else. And so today's ice cold brew is Shiner Berliner Weiss. Okay, and I think I chose that one just in commemoration of Hans Zimmer, who does the soundtrack. He's the composer of Dune, and he's just legendary. More on him later on here in the episode here. But as you could tell from the name Shiner, it's a beer that's brewed in Shiner, Texas. And it is, it's a pretty tasty brew here. It's kind of muddled, kind of got a little sour taste to it there, but it's still bubbly as well. And so go ahead and give it a try. Now, it's not like an exotic beer you can't find anywhere. Most people are going to be able to find it at their grocery store. So, but again, it's Schöne Berliner Weiss. Okay? So, schnell. Go get it. Just to give you a little German right there. Just to let you know, I learned all my German from the movie Die Hard. So those are the only words I know. Schnell, and Hans Gruber. And anyway, but I digress. Okay, so let's get further on into the Dune podcast. Okay, so a lot of people, when they think of Dune, they do get intimidated. Not everybody, but some people get intimidated by Dune because it is one of the more dense and rich and heady sci-fi novels of our time. It was written by Frank Herbert in 1965, and he came out with a bunch of sequels here. But this new movie is dealing with just the first part of the first book here, and but this movie does a good job of not getting into the weeds when it comes to Dune. I saw the original, the David Lynch Dune movie that came out in 1984 with Kyle MacLachlan and the soundtrack by Toto, and that movie that did get a little bit more into the weeds, got a little bit more. It was directed by David Lynch, and so if you ever seen any other David Lynch movies, there, like Mulholland Drive, or some of the other ones, right there, Twin Peaks. He's known for that. He's just got that weird sensibility, the weird what am I watching here? It's like, what? So it's got these weird kind of out there mentalities or sentiments, and so that applied to the 1984 Dune. It's just a weird movie to most folks, and so it's this movie though. The new Dune is a little bit more palatable to a wider array of audiences. It's just not. It's not one of those. It's not a Dune movie where you look down at what you're drinking, like, what did somebody put in my drink here? Like, this is just some weird psychedelic, freaky stuff that I'm watching. This is more about entertainment and trying to draw people into the story, which it most certainly does. Okay, so let me give the broad strokes of what Dune is about. Okay, for as much as one can. To try to simplify it here, it's tough, but hey, we're gonna do it, all right? Okay. So Dune takes place out in outer space, okay, and there are three main houses. So three parties, three groups of people that are have it out for each other, and they're called houses. So it's kind of like Game of Thrones, you got houses, right? House Lannister, House Stark. Well, in Dune, it's House Atreides, okay, House Carino, and House Harkonnen. Now, in Dune, House Atreides is portrayed as the good guys, just to simplify it. Okay, House Harkonnen are the bad guys. Okay, this is like the Empire in Star Wars, right? And then House Carino they're headed up by the Emperor. So the Emperor is the big shot, the big cheese of what's called the Imperium. So all the houses that I just mentioned, among with a bunch of other houses, are all in what's called an Imperium. Okay, and so the plot of this Dune movie is House Harkonnen and House Atreides don't like each other, and House Carino, run by the Emperor is jealous of Duke Leto Atreides. Duke Leto Atreides is the head of House Atreides, and Duke Leto Atreides is kind of like he's becoming, a rock star, right? Among the Imperium, among the people. They're like, oh man, we really dig this Duke Leto Atreides. Like, he's good people. He's pretty cool, and he's idolized. He's people like him, and the Emperor knows this, and he's trying to get Atreides out of the picture. So he, as part of that plot, what he does is House Harkonnen is running this planet called Arrakis. And the significance of planet Arrakis is that there's this stuff called spice. And spice is, just think of spice as the Dune version of oil, right? Here on Earth, oil is a very valuable commodity. It's used to run a lot of things, right? And so spice is the oil of this world. Spice is like, it's valuable. People want it. It allows you to conduct interstellar travel. It's got like a hallucinogen. It's used for a myriad of other things in this universe. So it's very valuable. Just think of it as it's a very valuable commodity, okay? So House Harkonnen, for many, many years, has been on Arrakis harvesting this spice, which makes them very, very wealthy, as you would imagine, right? So kind of like OPEC over in the Middle East, right? Very wealthy, a bunch of oil sheiks, right? Very wealthy. Well, House Harkonnen are the Middle Eastern oil sheiks of this world, okay? So to foster more bad will between House Harkonnen and House Atreides, the Emperor with House Carino says, hey, House Harkonnen, you're out of there. We're getting you off Arrakis. We're kicking you out. We're letting House Atreides take over. Now they're going to be making all the money, and you're out. So now you get to run a paper route instead of making all this cheddar, on Arrakis, cultivating this spice, right? And so that is the basic premise to start out with. And I'm not going to go into all the other nuts and bolts of this movie. But this movie, and another main character that I should mention is Paul Atreides. So Paul Atreides is the son of Duke Leto Atreides. And Paul Atreides, his mother, her name is Lady Jessica. Okay. She's played by Rebecca Ferguson. And so Rebecca Ferguson as Lady Jessica, she's part of this group of, I guess for lack of a better way of putting it, a group of witches is how some people refer to them, called the Bene Gesserit. And so these witches have powers, right? They have the powers. And this is one way that you can see the parallels between Dune and the whole Star Wars universe. And now Dune came first. So Dune was written in 1965. Star Wars didn't come out until 1977. And so George Lucas has straight up said that he was influenced by some of the things in Dune. So, like I said, Lady Jessica with the Bene Gesserit, these witches, they have a power called the Voice. And the Voice is pretty much the Jedi mind trick, okay? It's pretty much just like, I say something in a certain way, and it makes you do it. And you see some of that sampled in this movie. And then they also have like the Emperor in this movie. It's pretty much like the Emperor in Star Wars, right? You've got, so what with the Bene Gesserit and the power behind the Voice is pretty much like the Force as well. So you can definitely tell the influences that George Lucas took away from Dune. So, but Frank Herbert, who wrote Dune, he came up with this stuff first. So if you're watching this movie, you're like, that voice seems a lot like the Jedi mind trick. Well, no, Dune didn't steal it from Star Wars. Quite the opposite. Okay. So Lady Jessica is teaching Paul Atreides, who you'll find is the most important character, or up in this movie, he's the most important character, and he's got to look like the Luke Skywalker of Dune. Okay, he's like the main protagonist. He's on the hero's journey, right? And so he's supposed to take over House Atreides upon the event of his father's death, Duke Leto Atreides. But also his mother is teaching him the ways of, no, not the Force, the ways of the Bene Gesserit. And so she's helping him get powers like the voice, where he can command people to do things just with a certain octave of his voice, so to speak. Okay. And so they go to Arrakis to become the new cultivators of spice. And the movie just progresses, just forwards from there. All right. You just have a lot of dramatic, arcs in the story and twists and turns, and it just progresses from there. So I think I've probably confused all the non-Duners enough, all the people that, have watched the Dune movie before, or a Dune miniseries, or read the books. This is pretty basic information for them about the houses and the characters and whatnot. But as complicated, as glazed over as your eyes may be right now from the explanation about the houses and all that stuff right now, you'll feel better when you watch the movie. Trust me, okay? The movie is just so entertaining, and you don't have to remember all that information that I just mentioned right there to just to enjoy the movie. Just immerse yourself in the movie. It's just so great. And, it's got some, great scenes in it. You've got Paul Atreides. He seems like he gets along with everybody in the movie. You've got characters like Josh Brolin. He plays like a military advisor, so to speak. He's kind of like the head security detail guy there. And so he does some training with Paul Atreides. And you'll see that.
Guess I'm not in the mood today.
Mood? Yeah. What's mood to do with it? You fight when the necessity arises, no matter the mood. Now fight! Come on!
Have you?
Aye. But look down, my lord. You're to join me in death. I see you found the mood.
So that's Josh Brolin as Gurney Halleck there, and he's training Timothée Chalamet's Timothée Chalamet. There we go. Timothée Chalamet, his character of Paul Atreides, and also another character in this movie is Duncan Idaho. Here's another guy that Paul looks up to. He's played by Jason Momoa, so none other than Aquaman or Khal Drogo from Game of Thrones. So Jason Momoa does a pretty good job in this movie. So I wasn't that excited about having Jason Momoa in this movie there, just because I didn't think he would fit in. I mean, I like him in other movies, but I just didn't know how he was going to do as the character of Duncan Idaho. But he does really, really well. This movie is just a star-studded cast. I mean, you got Oscar Isaac as Duke Leto Atreides. Like I said, Rebecca Ferguson as Lady Jessica. You'll recognize her off some Mission Impossible movies. Stellan Skarsgård as Baron Harkonnen. He's pretty foreboding. I mean, Stellan Skarsgård always does a good job of playing bad guys in here. Javier Bardem, he's at the end as Stilgar. He's a part of the Fremen. The Fremen are like the native people on the planet of Arrakis, and so he doesn't really have a chance to really do much in this movie. I think in part 2, I'm sure Javier Bardem's going to be able to flex his muscles more in that movie. Who am I leaving out here? I'm sure I'm leaving out somebody, and I'm just totally doing a disservice to them. Zendaya, she's in this movie, so she's not in this movie all that much, but she plays Chani, I believe is her character, and she's a girl that Paul keeps dreaming about, and when he starts having visions of his future. And another thing about Paul and what makes him significant is he's propped up in this movie as a messiah figure who's going to lead the Fremen, who, again, are the native people of Arrakis, into independence or freedom, because they've been oppressed by the House Harkonnen that have been there, again, on Arrakis, cultivating the spice. And so as part of cultivating the spice, they've been oppressing the Fremen and you know, just destroying them, right? So, and so she's part of the Fremen right there, and so Paul's supposed to be this figure that's supposed to end all that, right, and just, you know, provide happier days for the Fremen and everybody else, right? So, one other thing I gotta mention here is just the visual effects in this movie. They are just lights out. I mean, there's so many movies with CGI in it that you just kind of get numb to it, but whoever did the visual effects in this movie did a great job. They have some really cool vehicles in this movie too. Some flying vehicles called ornithopters in this movie. They basically look like helicopters, but you look at them like, oh yeah, they're like a dragonfly version of helicopters. And it almost looks like the sequences with them, the visual effects almost look like they're created by the same people who did Avatar. Just because the flying sequences just look the same as they did in Avatar, where it just gives them this really distinct looking angles to the visual effects shots. There, I was really impressed with that. The sandworms are really cool looking at the visual effects. Sandworms are these big, massive sandworms that live underneath the sand on Arrakis there, and so they provide a whole nother danger to just wandering around, you know, on Dune, because these worms, they pick up on footsteps, on sound, and so you have to be very, very careful on how you walk, and so they could come out and take you out. And there's some really cool sequences with these massive sandworms in here, also known as the Shai Hulud is the name of the worms. And that's another thing about Dune, is you'll notice there's like a lot of just distinctive names for things that are exclusive to the Dune universe. I have to say the soundtrack is just outstanding. Like I was mentioning before, Hans Zimmer, you know, he did just the lights out spectacular, like in your face, just pulse pounding soundtrack to this movie. And it has passion behind it. And the reason it has passion behind it is because Hans Zimmer is just a big Dune nerd. I mean, he loves the books, the Dune books. And Denis Villeneuve, who's the director of this movie, when he went to approach Hans Zimmer about maybe doing the soundtrack, he told Hans Zimmer about, you know, what movie he's doing. And so when Hans Zimmer heard Dune, he just had this big exclamatory, "Oh my God!" You know, it's like, "Oh, you're doing Dune? Oh, sign me up right now. I'll do it." You know, and I guess the reaction from Hans Zimmer just shocked and startled Denis Villeneuve, who apparently didn't know that Hans Zimmer was, definitely a big Dune nerd. And so Hans Zimmer ended up just declining doing a couple of Christopher Nolan movies, because Hans Zimmer typically does the music for all the Christopher Nolan movies, like Inception and the Dark Knight trilogy, and some of those other movies, Dunkirk, Interstellar. But Christopher Nolan couldn't get Hans Zimmer for his other two movies, Tenet, and he's got the upcoming Oppenheimer movie, because Hans Zimmer is just in love with Dune, and so he's doing the Dune soundtrack. I mean, the Dune soundtrack is incredible. Ooh, see what I mean? Was I lying? You get that pounding parts of the soundtrack. Not throughout the whole movie. Hans Zimmer also does some quieter interludes with his music. But you know what? I'm gonna have a drink to Hans Zimmer, man, because he's hands down my favorite movie composer. Let's have a little Berliner Weiss for Hans Zimmer here. Oh yeah, that's for you, Hans. But yeah, he just poured his passion into this project, and he's got there's a couple of Dune soundtrack like accompanying CDs with all kinds of music from Hans Zimmer for Dune. So he definitely is a fanboy of the Dune universe. That is faux show. So just check out this movie. I mean, this is like my favorite movie here in a long time. It's just fantastic, okay? So I cannot give my endorsement to this movie enough, all right? So with that here, I just want to thank you again for listening to Movies Merica Podcast. Again, it's on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. Check out moviesmerica.com. I'm on there as well. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram under Movies Merica. I'd love to hear from you, because you know what? Hey, it's fun to record these podcasts, but it's even more fun to hear from you guys. And yeah, give it a 5-star rating, review it, download the podcast. That would be super duper, my friends. Okay, all right. And with that, you know what? Time to blast off of this planet Arrakis and drink some more of this beer. All right, everybody. Ciao.
Hey guys, don't leave the video quite yet. Okay, I've got a popo. They're coming after me, and I don't have much time to tell you, but you need to like and subscribe this video right here, down below. It's right down there. It's just waiting. It's waiting for you down there, okay? And make sure you watch these videos over here too. You'll be doing me a big favor. I'm gonna be in handcuffs pretty soon. All right, thanks for watching.